The song Welcome to the Internet by Bo Burnham helped convince me to quit social media. For a few months now, I've been logged out of Twitter and every other social media except YouTube. And YouTube's on thin ice. Honestly, Bo Burnham's entire special affected me pretty strongly as a piece of art, but especially this song. I think the song is partnered very well with the documentary The Social Dilemma on Netflix. It's a bad documentary. It has the architects of some of the biggest social media technology talking about how they used our physiology to drive up engagement via conditioning. That doesn't sound so bad as a single sentence, but when you break it down that they trained us like dogs to feed off the dopamine of notifications and new content, engineered an environment that encourages ideological conflict, and wore down our attention spans to nubs of only a few minutes or even a few seconds at a time, it sounds a lot worse. And they knew what they were doing. You can hear the people that invented this technology admit that they knew exactly what they were doing. They did it on purpose, and it resulted in a couple genocides, it worsened the climate disaster, and it helped push us even further into a post-truth world. And they made so much money. The documentary is bad because it was paid for and created in part by one of these scumfuck STEM lords, and at the end they recommend some sensible, milquetoast policy changes that a nice liberal politician might pretty please enact if they want to. Sir, don't inconvenience yourself. I'm not an anti-tech person necessarily. I actually love technology. I spent a lot of time as a teenager studying computer engineering, learning programming in my spare time, teaching myself front-end web design by cannibalizing MySpace profiles and Tumblr themes. I have been online in some way or another since I was very young, since this was catalogs, travel blogs, a chat room or two. So I'm not inherently against the concept of online communication. I think it's a valuable tool. But I'm here to ask you to consider logging off. I quit drinking 3.5 years ago, and quitting Twitter was harder. I've had my Twitter account for more than 10 years, and I started tweeting the most in the last 6 or so years. When I quit completely. I knew I didn't have the willpower to step back a little, similar to my drinking. I changed my passwords to random strings of numbers and letters and didn't save them in my password manager, so I will have to reset my passwords if I ever want access to my accounts. This has been enough of a stumbling block to keep me logged off. In the first week, I got extremely depressed. I would pick up my phone to look at notifications that were no longer there, like trying to push your glasses up when you're not wearing them. I had a million thoughts swarming in my head, the tangled ends of brewing conflicts and contradictions that I had once thought too important to abandon. Even now, when I think about all the important discourses, conversations, and events that I have missed, I'm filled with a feeling of dread. At the beginning, it was unbearable. We aren't meant to know every thought that other people have. That much information is not possible to fit into our primate brains. It's paralyzing, especially to people without a strong foundation of self-assuredness to build upon. Felix from Chapo Trap House sometimes jokes about people who spend 8 hours a day on Twitter, and that was me, and that's Twitter's ideal user. It's bread and butter. Those are people who see the ads and buy the products. They're the users that clog other people's mentions and have to confess their every thought like Dark Age sinners. It was an addiction. If I refreshed my notifications and didn't have one, it was a chip away at my self-esteem. If a tweet did below average numbers for my account, I felt depressed all day. My relationships in real life suffered. My friends were angry at me for being on the phone. I was completely disengaged from my partner. When I quit, I had a hard time making it through a conversation without a compulsive itch to check online and make sure someone wasn't mad at me or trying to talk to me. I began to realize how much of my life and myself I had lost to social media. Entire days where I did nothing but refresh notifications and block people and argue with people and stare into the abyss. I would read the profiles and tweets of fascists and TERFs so I could block them and their voices grew in my mind. I still can't think anything without what I call the eternal tennis match going on in my mind. Whether I find something pleasurable or unpleasant or disgusting or beautiful, there's always a phantom with a counterpoint lobbing a judgmental serve in my mind with the most disingenuous voice. When I was young, I used to read constantly. I could wake up and read books all day until it was time to go to sleep. I haven't been able to sit through an entire book since around 2017. I went to college and got a degree in visual art. I made hundreds of drawings, paintings, and prints. Since about 2018 or 2019, I have made almost no art. The list of things that brought me joy and comfort dwindled down to one thing: completely occupying my mind and attention with social media. My worst period began when I released my second video essay. I had never had that many notifications before. I had to change the way I received notifications because my phone was blowing up. I went from a few subscribers to a couple thousand overnight because Peter Coffin shared the video that I made. This flood pulled me under in a way I had never experienced before. In 2020, it got worse during the George Floyd protests. I was trying to coordinate support in my city. I had people sending me updates and conflicting information about local protests and police actions and fascist movements. If I didn't check Facebook every single hour, I would miss arrests and brutality and tear gas. When it was over and liberals had largely diffused the local protests back into apathy and electoralism, I couldn't get the memo. I almost never put my phone down, even in the shower, even in my sleep. So I quit. I logged out. I changed my passwords, I waited for the storm of emotions to pass, and eventually I stopped craving the notifications long enough that things have gotten slightly better. I still watch a lot of YouTube, but I got a gym membership, I clean my house more often, I've made a little bit of art, I started journaling, I found a new therapist and even got a job. In my previous job, I was almost fired because I couldn't put my phone down without having a panic attack or a suicidal episode. Now I don't look at it at all. I leave it at home sometimes. I made this video because if any of this sounds like you, I hope that you seriously consider logging out for good. The only way to win this game of eternal hostility and attention is to stop playing. Social media manipulates our attention for the profit of advertisers. It shapes our cognition, turns us into our own snitches and our own abusers. I think that everyone should consider logging off, but especially if you're interested in leftist politics. We can't build a revolution on social media. I don't care if you're on Twitter or Mastodon or Slingshot or whatever. It's a false reality. It's a constriction of the borders of your world to a manageable landscape that is completely owned by capital. Using social media is leasing out a chunk of your literal brain to capitalism. I'm not exaggerating. The answer is the same as it has always been. Localized direct action networks based on trust and mutual understanding. If you think that doesn't exist where you are and you have no recourse except social media, you're wrong. Sometimes that environment isn't pre-existing, but you can make it exist, and you have to. If we allow social media to consume us and our activism and even our most secret thoughts, there's no hope. Becoming ungovernable means becoming free from social media, free from bourgeois antagonism, free from surveillance, and free from capital. Thanks for listening. If I make videos from now on, I'm going to make them podcast style like this without much of a visual component. I'm good at writing and I'm good at speaking, but I'm not particularly good at video editing. This will make it easier to share my thoughts more regularly. I still have a Patreon, but I've had it paused for the last few months. I've decided that I'm pausing it now on months where I don't make anything so that the pressure won't be hanging over my head. I agreed to read off the names of patrons, so I guess I'll keep doing that. If you like this video and you want to give me money about it, you can do that on patreon.com/Bemundolack or ko-fi.com/Bemundolack. Thanks to 1011X, Aardvarks Colin, Asher Recker, August Soren, Aviana and Kim, Break the Wheel, Teresa Van, Seal Rossmiller, Devin Fox, Dollar Store Wave Dash, Dr. Ryu, Eric Orberg, Femi, Fahad Kaitan, Grimling, Indoor Wah, Jacob Nelson, Jan Enders Bremer, Jordan Little, Joseph Gunson, Joseph Yamin, Khalil Fazal, Klarstrup, Lucy, Malachi Muncie, Peruvian Red Andre, Polite Pigeon, Porla Toilet, Princess Choo Choo, River Ransom, Solal, Spark Plug, The Appalachian Left, Thomas Kent, Thomas Shelby, Three Hedgehogs in a Trench Coat, Thirsty Lark, Willie B., Zachary Seeley Payne, and Zactar.